Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast, where we dive into the stories behind the boldest business moves and the unexpected journeys that shape today's most impactful founders. In this episode, I'm joined by Bennett Maxwell, founder of Dirty Dough, the cookie company that's not only disrupting the dessert space, but also taking on billion-dollar competitors in the process. What started as a side hustle quickly turned into a national brand and a legal battle with an industry giant. But Bennett's story isn't just about cookies or courtrooms. It's about resilience, purpose, and the deeper meaning behind entrepreneurship. From building a wildly successful franchise system to launching his own podcast, Deeper Than Dough, Bennett's journey is packed with lessons in grit, growth, and going against the grain. If you've ever felt reluctant to take the leap or wondered how far your values can take you in business, this conversation is one you won't want to miss. Hey, Bennett, welcome to the program.
Mike, thanks for having me. I'm a little pumped up with that intro, the music. I like it.
Yeah, my problem is I hear that music all the time, so it kind of gets in my head, and it's unhummable. I don't know. It's hard to describe, but it does get in my head as well. Well, thanks for agreeing to be my guest. I'm excited to have this conversation. I love cookies. Who doesn't? Right? That's kind of a litmus test. To be my friend, you have to love dogs and cookies, and maybe you're at least one of those. Let's start with the beginning, with the kind of the origin story. What inspired you to start Dirty Dough, and what was the spark that led you into the cookie business?
Yeah, it was, my cousin was Crumble's first employee. He was their tech guy. And they started franchising in like 2019. They said, hey, do you want to sell franchises? That's my background, sales. So they're like, we're looking for a franchise salesperson. I met with them once, but quickly saw that it was an opportunity for me because the opportunity was, we're sold out of Utah. So you'd have to buy outside of Utah, and we require you to be owner operated. So I'm like, wait, so I have to buy my own job and I have to move? Like, no, thank you. But in kind of that same, job interview, then it was like, well, do you want to buy a the franchise opportunity came up. Anyways, so I saw it as an opportunity, but I saw a gap. I'm like, how many people really want to move and buy a job, running a cookie store? A guy that I went to high school with moved to Arizona because I grew up, again, here in Utah, and he was the first gourmet cookie company in Arizona. And he was selling Dirty Dough out of his apartment. And he posted on Facebook, hey, selling out almost every night looking for an investor. So I invested with him. He opened up the store in 2020, March of 2020, like the week that the COVID shutdowns were.
The
like we never had a grand
time
opening
possible. Yeah.
Yep. So I started out just as an investor. He opened up the store, and then I said, hey, Tyler, let's franchise it. At the time I was living in San Diego, I had a solar company, a residential solar company. And I said, this is the place to franchise it. I just heard Crumble did $3.6 million in one stupid cookie store. Let's go. Long story short, he told me he was working on it. Months later, he's like, I haven't even started on it. I want out. And I'm like, oh crap, I just lost all my money. So he's like, yeah, I'm looking to sell. So I've never been in food, franchising, any of that, but I thought I was going to lose all my money, my investment. So I said, what are you selling it for? What the hell? I'll give it a go. But that's kind of how I started. So
that's the perfect story for the show. The show's called The Reluctant Entrepreneur. I mean, your motivation was at least partially to recoup your money, or at least not lose your money, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Otherwise I would have never been in the cookie business. But I do look at, I started out with pest control, doing door-to-door pest control and satellite TVs and smart home security systems and cameras, and then solar, and then cookies. I'm a sales guy and I like communicating. It doesn't, it's the same if you're communicating to somebody and trying to discover their needs to see if they need pest control. If they don't, whether or not they should buy a franchise or not. So wide array of industries, but it's kind of the same business principles, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find pretty much every job, I've been in my industry for 40 years now, this year, 40 years. And prior to that, I probably had maybe 18 or 20 jobs, prior to all the years before that. And every one of them had something to do with sales. And sales isn't, I think if you're in sales, you are an entrepreneur. Even if you're on a salary or punching a time clock in sales, you have to be entrepreneurial. And salespeople fall into two categories. They make the most money and the least money in the world, right? They are both ends of the spectrum. And I'm sure you've had both of those experiences in your past life, right? Even now, you're still selling. So even now, I'm sure you experience both ends of that spectrum.
Yeah, I never really stopped selling. But I mean, I bought the company and then I wanted to focus on sales, and then which eventually turned into capital raising as well. I hired a CEO full time right at the beginning. That's 40-year vet to be like, okay, you do the operations, let me do kind of the sales side, and that's how we expanded pretty quick. I think because I found people that had more experience than my zero experience.
Yeah, that was my downfall. I was very confident in sales. So when I started my company, which was 33 years ago, I knew I could sell my product. I knew nothing like you. I knew nothing about how to run a company. Only I didn't have any resources to hire a CEO or a CFO or a CTO or any C. I was the only C in the C, and so I had to do everything. And I was good at sales, which was a problem because I brought in orders. I just couldn't build
you
them.
outsell your ops. Yep.
Yeah, I sold myself into almost into bankruptcy because I had no problem getting orders. I had no problem selling equipment, selling the company, selling myself, selling the product. I just didn't know what to do after that. And I'm sure there's people watching or listening that say, "I wish I had that problem," but that was a real problem for me. But you at least knew what you didn't know and covered that end of the spectrum, which was quite wise.
Yes, I'd already ran into it. Like with my solar company, if you outsell your installer and they get pushed back a few months and your customer could cancel up until install, then it's like, crap, that's not a good thing. So the outselling the operations, I think is something that I'm always trying to steer clear against. So since then, we opened up 100 stores, closed 20 of them in a pretty rough market. Sold 450 franchises, and then I've sold the business, all within, I guess, like 3.5 years. So it's been pretty quick. And now I'm reevaluating. Okay, what do I want to do next? Sales. But rather than doing sales and trying to create the product, I opted this time to just go find the product and just be the sales piece. And so far, it's been really fun, not having to to pull my hair out with all of that.
Right. You've had previous ventures before, as you mentioned. I think on another podcast you were on, did you say you used to sell solar, or was that?
Yep, I did solar, and then I started a solar company and sold that right after I bought Dirty Dough.
Wow. So you've had previous adventures before. How did those experiences shape your mindset and approach to become an entrepreneur? And how did the experiences that you had in the past, good or bad experiences, influence Dirty Dough?
Yeah. I mean, you talk about sales and, there's the mixed feelings like, yes, sales is important, but other people are like, oh, I'm not a sales guy. Switch the word sales for communication and then you're golden, right? So it's like, okay, well now I just want to be a professional communicator. So that's what I set off to do when I was 22, got back from a Mormon mission in Tijuana. I lived there for two years. Came back to Utah, and everybody and their dog sells things door to door because you have all of these former Mormon missionaries, right? So I started to do pest control immediately, but rather than focus on what most people do is like, this is a stepping stone. This is a summer job. Eventually, I'm going to go back to my real job. I dropped out of college with just one semester left from graduating with pre-med. And when I did that, I'm like, well, I'm still going to commit the same amount of time, money, energy, effort that I was going to be to become a pediatrician, but now I'm going to contribute that to be a professional communicator. And then if you could learn how to knock on somebody's door and kids are screaming in the back, the dog's barking, it's dinner time, you could capture somebody's attention, get to know them, ask the right questions, and sign a year-long contract in 15 minutes. How's that not going to help you be a better CEO or a better nurse or a better dad, right? Like it was changing the target marker, I guess, to like, it's all about communication. So once I did that, then I got into Dirty Dough. Dirty Dough started growing a lot faster than expected. Then I had to go raise capital. Well, I have no experience asking people for money, but how do you do it? You know, it's the same process, right? It's the sales process, discovery, asking questions. What do they need? And because of that, I was able to, 50 grand here, 20 grand here, 200 grand here. I was able to raise $9 million over 2 years with no experience because of the sales experience. And then again, what the people know about Dirty Dough because of the lawsuit, a lot of it because of our rapid growth, but it's really all my communication through social media. Dirty Dough's never posted, hey, we franchise. We've never paid for a franchise lead. We've never used a franchise broker, yet we sold 450. And it was just me communicating on podcasts and social media. So I would say all of the success could be traced back to like, do you know how to communicate and read people and understand them and ask the right questions and work out win-win scenarios?
Yeah, we can almost have an entire episode on what you just talked about, which was using social media, providing value on social media, becoming an authority in your space on social media, and compare that to traditional advertising. I teach some courses on something I'm guilty of coming up with phrases and names for things that have already been named by others. I just didn't realize it. But I coined this conscious marketing, and it turned out I didn't coin it at all. It was already coined before I discovered it. But conscious marketing is kind of a newer approach to provide value-based, authority-based marketing efforts, not braggadocious, buy from me, we're great, they suck. We make the best cookies in town. We're healthy, we're this, we're that. The young people these days, and you're getting old when you start a sentence with young people these days, where we have spam filters on our email, they have spam filters in their brain. And they know an ad when they see one. But if they see a blog post or a video on YouTube or Instagram or Snapchat or Facebook or LinkedIn, someone like yourself being authentic, providing some value, not just call now, operators are standing by, but really providing some value and connecting with them on an emotional level, that totally beats traditional advertising, because I think traditional advertising is dead. To your point.
The social media strategy was just, I think it was Alex Hormozy, if you've heard of him. And he's like, who should you be online? Whoever you are in person. Like what makes Alex Hormozy one of the top influencers is he talks about the gym and franchising and education and fitness. And that's just like, that's not because I tried to say what's going to sell the best. It's just, I'm putting my life online and people relate to it. And that's what makes you you. So I would say one in every 20 posts mentions like, hey, you could buy a Dirty Dough franchise, right? It wasn't me promoting Dirty Dough. It was just being out there. And I think that people they can relate a little bit more. Funny story on that. So I bought the company and we were doing Instagram, stuffed cookies. You just open up a cookie and you could get, we'd get 1 million views. We have one store, and then you get 2 million views. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm bringing on partners. I get advisory board. Like, hey, I'm going to, going hard. Let's get a legit marketing company rather than somebody's wife with an iPhone. We did. And to this day, we've gone through like 6 different marketing companies. Not one of them has delivered the same results. We'll pay a marketing company 30 grand a month and it doesn't didn't deliver the same results as like the raw, organic, like 7-second clip with some catchy phrase in the back. They try to make it way too professional, and exactly what you said, like those spam filters. It's like, no, I'm just going to scroll through that Dirty Dough post if it looks like an ad, even though it's an organic post.
I just had someone on my show, on this show, who was the founder of a company called Funny Sales Videos, and they make videos that are a little bit irreverent, professionally made, but looks not quite so Hollywood.
Yeah, kind of like shaky cam, like all the YouTube
yeah,
style.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then, and when they film it, they film it in such a manner that they know they're going to come up with shorts and reels and things like that. And they get millions of views on the stuff they produce. And it's just hitting a different market, and it's hitting in a different level, at a different level. So that definitely works. So going back to your journey with Dirty Dough, was there a moment in the early days when you thought, this is it, this is going to work? Or were there more moments of doubt than positive moments?
Yeah. Let me think. So it was like 3 years. So that's about 1,000 days. I would say I had 4,000 moments of doubt and maybe 5,000 moments of like, this is going to work. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it's every day you have both. I would say the majority of it, though, I mean, it was like, hey, we have a $200,000 payroll. We don't have money. If you don't go raise money in the next month, we're going under. And then it was like living like that for 2 years.
Yeah.
I think that was probably harder than anything was always being on like you have to raise money, you have to raise money, you have to raise money. Because if you're going from, again, we opened up 100 stores in like 2 years. It takes capital. And our model is, we'll make it easy for you guys as the franchisees. We'll make all the cookies. We portion them, pre-stuff them, world's only 3-layer cookie. I'm going to ship it to you anywhere in the country. All you do is put it in the oven. Ovens are programmed, press start. 1 employee, 500 square feet. Like, the pitch was great. It's like a very simple model. But then how do you deliver on that? Well, you have to go spend a few $1 million on a freaking factory. And then you have to buy trucks. And you have to hire employees. And then you're shipping half truckloads from Utah to Pennsylvania to Florida to California because you don't have enough stores open yet. Because you only have 7 stores, Yeah. So a lot of navigating there.
We've talked a lot on the show about growth, and rapid growth is a luxury most small businesses cannot afford. And there's a difference between growth and scaling. And I didn't know the difference back in the day. And I was, kind of like your story. My bookkeeper would come up to me and go, Mike, we don't have enough money to cover payroll next week. We pay every Thursday. Every Thursday. I hate Thursdays. Even today. We're well past the worry, but I still have a thing about Thursdays. And she'd say, we don't have enough money to cover payroll next Thursday. So I would go out and I'd generate cash, which I was good at because there's the sales, right?
Yep.
But it was not profitable cash. I was making fear-based decisions. I was looking through a lens of, I just need money. Well, it won't be profitable because we have to give discounts to get the money in that quick. Okay, fine. But that's not my problem today. Tomorrow, I'll worry about profit. Today, I worry about payroll. And we make these decisions, day by day by day by day. And that's growth. Scaling is expensive because, we would take the profit from we sell equipment. And, today our machines sell for about $100,000 a piece. But so we'd make money off one machine and we'd get 3 more orders. So we have to take the profit from one machine and invest in building 3 more. And then we sell 3 more, and then we sell 6 more, and then we sell 12 more, and then et cetera. And then we have to get a new building, and then we have to hire more people, and then we have to have more inventory. And we're constantly investing in the future. And as long as we were growing, we had no cash. It was all sucked up and throwing it back into the business. To your point, getting a factory, getting trucks, hiring more people, all that, more shipping costs. You're always investing in the future. Where it started to get really sweet in terms of cash flow was when things started leveling off a little bit. And then the money started accumulating rather than just being reinvested back into the business. But I warn people, if they're not well capitalized, go for quality over growth. Growth, if you seek growth, you'll get it, but you'll get all the problems associated with it. If you seek good decisions, then good decisions will probably result in growth relative to your ability to fund that growth. And I think that's where a lot of companies that have good ideas fail. They just they are so successful, they're a victim of their own success, and they just run out of money. And I'm sure that's what kept you up at night, right?
Yes. Yeah. I just heard this recently. I think it was, the biggest business or the biggest problem in a new business is going to the next stage or, growing.
Yeah,
And
sure.
then once you start scaling, the biggest problem in your business is scaling. It's like you don't have it. And then once you start doing it, that's your new biggest problem. But it's just,
Yeah.
it's a different set of problems. But I would agree with you on we had 200 employees. Freaking for what? You know what I mean? Like, because we opened up all these stupid corporate stores and it's like, I try to do too many different things with my ADHD brain. It's like, okay, well, I told my advisor I'm going to only do one business. So dirty dough it. Okay. But I'm going to do 15 corporate stores across 5 different states. And then I'm going to also be raising money and doing like JV ventures with some other deals. And then I'm going to open up a food production company as well as a logistics company. And it was just, way too much. So before I sold, I got a guy on as an advisor, Greg Majewski, who's the former CEO of Jimmy John's. And we know Jimmy John's over the last 30 years has been the most successful food franchise in the world. And he was their CEO during like the rapid growth. So he's an advisor, very, very valuable advisor. Then December of 23, I'm like, Greg, we need help. Within a week, we made him CEO, moved our current CEO, who's doing a great job, but just overwhelmed, over to president. First thing that Greg did was he got rid of our warehouse, got rid of the equipment, got rid of the logistics arm. He's like, no, we're outsourcing all that. We'll revisit that when we get 300 stores open. I'm like, oh, there's all that time and money just reversed, but it was the right decision. A year later, I'm like, oh God, I should have done that way sooner, or I should have just found a co-packer before. But the sexiness of growth and, the excitement sometimes blinds you. I'm like, wait, but what am I actually after? Well, I'm actually just after a little bit more income, a little bit more time, a little bit more happiness. I don't need 200 employees to do that.
Yeah, I think growth can be a seduction. And, and society tells you, I used to belong to a CEO peer group where it's a bunch of CEOs that meet once a month, and as I like to describe it, and lie to each other about how well they're doing, right? And they're all about growth. What are you doing to grow? What are you doing to grow? If you're not growing at 15% or 20% or 30% a year, there's something wrong with you, And I drank that Kool-Aid for a long time. And when growth was the only thing on my radar, back to an earlier point, it was really troubled growth. It was difficult growth, and it almost killed us. Now we grow organically. We're not trying to grow, but we grow as a result of the products we make and the services we provide and the way we market and the culture of our company, and that fuels our growth. Our goal is not to grow. Our goal is to keep serving our customers, and our machines are in the electronic assembly space, and they solve a particular problem that, if not resolved, makes electronics less reliable. So, we do sell a box, but I like to say we sell reliability more than that.
Yeah.
Just like I'm sure that the same is in your world. You're not selling flour and yeast and chocolate. You're selling an experience, right? I mean, if they just want cookies, they can just go down to
make
the,
them.
make them
Walmart
or
and
buy Oreos or something, right? And made in a, mass factory somewhere. But you're selling an experience. You're selling something beyond the dough, right? Your company was famously sued by, I think it was Crumbl. Is that right?
Yes.
And they are like $1 billion with a B, $1 billion competitor, right? They're kind of the king of that space, or at least they were. Can you walk me through what happened? How'd you get sued, and how did you handle all the pressure? I've been sued by a competitor, so I'm curious to hear your story. How did you handle that?
Yeah. So
I'm sure this is a story you probably get tired of telling, but
no, I'm fine. But I know it because of that. You know what I mean? So, we're in Utah County. Crumbl's headquarters is also in Utah County, and there's just one main freeway, one corridor, I-15, and they've never put up any billboards. We're about to open up our first store, our first franchise, so we just have one corridor. So we do, Dirty dough coming soon. Digitally rotating billboards, they're pretty cheap. The next month, Crumble sues us. Well, no, the next month, Crumble puts up $50,000 worth of billboards across the entire state, the permanent ones. We're the number one cookie company in America. We sell 1 million cookies a day. It's like, well, just look at their prices. You could calculate that. Even then in 2022, that was $1 billion company. And you're like, okay, so they flood the freeway with all of these billboards and then they sue us. And it's like, oh crap. Stomach drops, like, shoot, this is a big company. I don't know if it's worth fighting it, whatever. And then I just finally and then I read through the lawsuit and I'm like, okay, I've never read a lawsuit, but this is silly. Like, you can't put that other people can't do sprinkles on their cookie. You can't say that other people can't use vanilla ice cream. You can't attach your trade dress on your box and it says, must be pink, must be have the word Crumble cookies. However, we do not claim the shape of this mark. We do not claim the shape of this box on this mark, period. And then they specifically sue us only for the shape of the box.
Yeah.
I'm like,
well, they wouldn't have got it past the trademark office if they had tried to claim the shape of the box. Right.
Exactly. But yet, if you read the lawsuit, the only thing that around our box is the shape itself. That's the only thing that they claim that we're copying them. So anyways, then it's like, okay, this is just a bullshit lawsuit, whatever. You have to fight it. I had a really good advisor who's like, this happens all the time in business, especially in the tech space, which is his background. It's like, you have a bunch of competitors, you just sue them. Yeah. You just drown them out in legal fees. And it's like, it takes a year or two to get anything done. So anyways, that's what I just thought that it was. And then a local news article picked it up. And then now it's like, crap. But 6 weeks have gone by. So 6 weeks, nothing happened other than just like, whatever, I'm gonna have to deal with this. Local news article picks it up. And now I'm like, okay, every person buying a franchise or ever going to buy a franchise, all the people who have already sold franchises, like, now I have to go explain this to everybody. Or I could just do it once on social media and just be very public on everything. So that's what I chose to do, like posting it on social media, like, hey, kind of making fun of it. Crumble suing companies for sprinkles. If your grandma, uses sprinkles,
watch out,
warn her,
grandma.
Yeah, something like that.
Check your mail.
And then we did some billboards. We did our cookies don't crumble with competition and cookies so good. Cookies so good we're being sued, and had basically made a cookie look like a pornographic image by like blurring it out, putting censored, and let your taste buds be the judge, bunch of different things. And I'm sure people saw those, right? But I posted on LinkedIn and social media, tagged Crumble, like, hey, Crumble, love your new billboards. What do you think about mine? And then, I don't know, 100 news articles pick that up,
they love that post.
Yeah. And that image of the 5 billboard stacked on top of each other. And then that turned into professional commercials. So when you're talking about those, like the funny ads, if you've ever seen one, this came out like 10 years ago, but it was like 30 million views. Squatty Potty, one of that.
Yeah.
The unicorn with the poop, with the rainbow poop
going into an ice cream cone.
Yes. So James Dayton was the creative director on that. And he'd called me right after.
Yeah, they're in Utah. That company's in Utah.
Yeah, Harmons Brothers. So he sold his company to Harmons Brothers. And anyways, he called me right as he saw the lawsuit. He was like, hey, we got to do some videos around this. And I didn't know him before. Anyways, but we did. And the videos were hilarious. And then that got us on CNBC and Good Morning America all the time. Crumble wouldn't accept a single interview. Well, I didn't turn down a single interview. So it really turned the tide into like, David versus Goliath. But a lot of people are like, oh man, these two cookie companies are fighting, the two industry leaders. It's like, no, we have one store. They have 300. Like, we're not on the same page. But it did elevate us in a sense to their status, gave us the publicity. I already had the most simple franchise model I think I could create with one of the best teams you could find. We just needed more eyes, and the lawsuit gave us those eyes.
Well, society likes two things. They like villains and heroes, right? And you were clearly on the hero side. When I got sued by a competitor, also a former employer of mine, I left there to start my company, and it would compete with their company on some level anyway. I was angry, which actually helped because anger is a motivating force. It may not be the most positive motivating force, but it was a motivating force. And at some point, though, reality kicked in, and I'm like, we were getting deposed. Our customers were getting deposed. Our vendors were getting deposed. We had they'd subpoenaed our bank records, and it was very intrusive, as it's designed to be. And they were on this wild fishing expedition, and we knew it. Our attorneys knew it, but we were running out of cash because every time there was a deposition, we had to hire our stenographers. They had to hire their stenographers. My attorney had to be there, and it was expensive. And so at one point, I just dropped all humility, and I called my former boss, and I said, I don't think I've done anything wrong. I think we can both agree, whether you agree so publicly or not. I didn't do anything wrong, but the last thing I want to do is see you in court. So let's just work something out. And he started laughing, and he said, if you think you're going to make it to court, you're a fool. He goes, I'm going to bankrupt you before you ever get inside of a courtroom for trial. And that was his playbook. That was it. That was the MO. And he didn't, I don't think, ever realize how close he was to that prophecy. But fortunately, we were on this experimental system in Superior Court. It was called a fast track system, and they were guaranteeing 1 year from the date of service to the date of a judgment.
Wow.
1 year. So we had
I was 18 months. We didn't even finish discovery. Crumble didn't even finish their discovery, turning over the discovery. Yeah. Anyways.
Well, we had our judge was about to retire. He had 6 months left. This was 6 months into it. And he said, we're on this fast track system, which we agreed to. And he was a no-nonsense judge. We had a bench trial, so there was no jury, thankfully. And he would sanction the attorneys if they delayed. If they were playing games, he'd just fine them. And it took a couple of fines, and they played by the rules. So things went very quick. It was quite expeditious. But that meant money was leaving very quickly too, because it was, expert witnesses and, all this stuff. But we won, had some of our attorney's fees awarded to us. Never saw them, but we won. And, or as I like to say, their attorney won and my attorney won. I think both of us were losers for this whole thing, but we survived. But yeah, I can be competitive and arrogant at times, and particularly in my younger days. And I was kind of like, "Oh yeah, you're going to sue me? Bring it on! Give it your best shot." I rethink that now. Now I will do everything I can to avoid litigation because it's not designed for justice. It's designed for a certain outcome. And I'm sure, my opinion would be when Crumble sued you, it wasn't really to make it to court. They figured they would step on you like a crumb on a floor, right?
Yeah, 1,000% it wasn't. If you just, anybody that knows how to read English could read that, because it's not like I, again, have any experience with lawsuits, but I'm like, okay, yeah, you guys can't sue people over. You can't win if you sue people over this, but you can sue people
for anything you want. Yeah.
Anything. I don't like the way you coughed at me, because that is going to cause me emotional distress. Tomorrow there's a lawsuit. You go to the bank to get an SBA loan and they say, do you have any active lawsuits? And you're like, yes, but it's stupid. It's just because I coughed and this guy's crazy.
Well, let me know when it's over.
Yep, let me know when it's over. And you're like, wait a second. That could take my story with Crumble. It was 18 months. 18 months. They didn't even finish sending the discovery that we requested for them. Just delay after delay after delay.
Yeah, and they got the money. I got a phone call from a prospective customer. This is back when we were being sued. And they were about to place an order for a machine. And they said, Mike, we heard a rumor that your company's being sued. I'm like, yeah, we are. He goes, oh, that could, our buyers, may not want to order from you. We didn't realize you were being sued. I said, yeah. I said, well, who are you going to go with if you don't go with us? And they mentioned my former employer. I said, that's who's suing us. And are you kidding? I'm like, no. They told me you should not buy from my company because they're being sued. They're in a lawsuit, they're in a big lawsuit and they're going to lose. They never said it was them. So as soon as they heard that, they ordered from us, just kind of out of spite, but yeah, it's amazing the legal games that companies will play, rather than just playing fair. There's room there's enough room in this earth for more than, one major cookie company, right?
I think what happened to you though, like on an individual basis, people could smell out the BS and they don't like bullies. People don't like bullies. So they could smell that. They're like, okay, I'm going to buy from you because your former boss is a bully. You could go count 10,000 comments, not that they were justified or anything, but that say boycott Crumble, because that was the reaction
Sure.
of like, hey, this is what's happening. And then I was also very open on, I think there's like 13 points in the lawsuit, and I broke down every one of them and how you could go verify that it was false, or at least like 9 of the 13. But because I was very open on that's where I think a lot of that supported. But I guess at a macro level, talking to a lot of people at a time through social media rather than one. But I think the concept's the same. Like people will get on your side if they know the story, and they'll support you, which is pretty cool. That's the world we live in.
Right. Well, it's almost like GoFundMe mentality. People will buy from you just to help a good cause, right? They feel good and it tastes good. So clearly the lawsuit helped you way more than they expected it to, and probably in the early days more than you expected it to, but you turned it.
Yeah, no.
You spun it. Didn't even really spin it. You were just authentic with what's going on. You're being sued over the shape of a box and sprinkles, and the relationship with your grandmother uses sprinkles. Is she going to be sued next? I mean, that hits home a lot. So that was actually something in hindsight to be grateful for, even though I'm sure you never want to go through that again.
I was grateful as soon as I started posting on social media and we started getting a lot of franchise inquiries. So like, I'd say 3 months, it was like, that kind of sucked. After 3 months, up until the day we settled, it was like, you're collecting hundreds of thousands a month in franchise fees. So you're fine paying a $20K attorney fee. You're like, sweet, this is cheaper than marketing.
Yeah.
So,
and way more effective.
Looking back, I mean, there's how many companies in history of franchising have sold 450 franchises in 2 or 3 years, or ever, really, right? Not that many. And I think that if you'd given me $5 million, I would have been able to get those same results. So yes, I am grateful for it. Everything always seems to fall exactly into place if you just wait long enough, right? Or not try to force it, which is kind of what you were going through at the beginning. I'm like, I don't want to force my growth. If I grow, and it's a result from doing good business practices.
Yes.
But you're not forcing growth, which I like. I'm definitely a believer in not forcing life or business. Yes, you need to be tenacious. You need to go get, obviously I'll find a million solutions to anything, but finding solutions and pivoting, I think, is a little bit different than forcing like, no, it has to be this way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So Dirty Dough's obviously grown quite rapidly through franchising. What caused you to choose a franchising model versus just building out more stores that you would own?
Yeah, I asked that question to quite a few people when I bought the company. I have one store. Do I want to franchise it? Do I want to go corporate? And one person particularly, they own a few hundred restaurants here in Utah, the Savory Fund. Josh, their COO, is saying, hey, well, if you have a concept that is patentable, do you have something that you've cornered the market on? I was like, no, I have cookies. I have 3-layer cookies, the only 3-layer cookies in the world right now, but only because I found the machine and, put 2 to 2 together, but you can't patent that. So he's like, okay, if you don't have anything like protecting your market, then you need to consider speed. So now it's, is speed to the market more important in your business? And the answer is yes. So now how do you grow a little bit quicker? Well, you have a lot of money, or you go find partners that have money, which is franchising. So we went that route, right? To go open up 100 stores would have cost, I don't know, $25-35 million. But we didn't have to pay for that, because we partnered with different franchisees. So that was kind of the thought process that I went through. The other thing was like franchising, if done correctly, could be amazing, right? Like here's a system that works. There's no guarantee that's going to work every single time, but like it's a system that works. It's worked. Then you have all of the support. So as a business owner, like if I'm good at sales, shouldn't be doing bookkeeping. I should find a system or somebody else to do my bookkeeping for. Well, if you get into the right franchise system, they'll all have all the preferred vendors on literally every single aspect of the business. So at least I think franchising is really good starting out for new people because you're getting a playbook and then, test it out, learn from those operations, and then maybe go branch off into your own thing. But I also like that a lot on how do we get more people into entrepreneurship? What does it take to be an entrepreneur? Time, money, and expertise. So how do I lower those barriers of entry so more people could jump into entrepreneurship? Well, the money it takes to open up a dirty dough is less than half of a Crumble because we don't need all the mixers. You don't need the huge space, right? The expertise required, you will never measure flour. You will never beat the eggs. There is no expertise required. The time required is you typically correlate it to your employees. Well, if I have half the employees because I'm making the cookies and don't have to hand weigh them in each store, and that was kind of the other model and reason to franchise. Can we lower the barrier of entry to let more people franchise or own business that otherwise wouldn't have because of any one of those three barriers?
Yeah, no, that sounds attractive, actually. What's been the most surprising challenge in growing a franchise system?
Surprising challenge.
Or were you prepared?
No, I've never been prepared. I've always thought I was prepared.
I just threw a way out for you just in case, but I threw you a life.
No. The biggest challenge or the biggest surprise, I would say finances, has been I hired every freaking CFO, fractional CFO, full-time CFO, bookkeeper, whatever, and nobody could. I mean, it's my fault, right? Because again, I kind of explained before, I had 10 entities created, and then started it was too much. But that was every time I thought that we had our projections and everything done correctly, and I trusted 7 different people to do it, still not done. And I was, anyways, that the financial side during the rapid growth was the biggest issue. And then that caused the biggest stress because then you get the calls are like, hey, we need money in a month. We need a few $100,000 in a month. And you're like, what? We just did projection 3 months ago. We were supposed to be good for 6 months. That sucked.
Yeah, totally would. I kind of know at least half the answer to this question. And the question is, how do you maintain brand quality and consistency across franchise locations? You have hundreds of franchises, especially when your brand is built on such a bold identity. Now, I know that part of the answer will be what you've already said. You're responsible for the mix. You're not having your franchise operators mix flour and all the eggs and all the different ingredients together. So from a food consistency standpoint, as long as they set the timer for the right, the oven for the right time and temp, you're going to get a good product. But it's more than a product. It's obviously the product is important, but I would assume there's a certain atmosphere within the stores. There's a certain branding. There's a certain culture that you're looking for when you when you accept franchisees. So how do you maintain that the consistency that you're looking for when you designed the whole concept?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Consistency. So you nailed the product. We do that. So the product's consistent. Then you have the look and the feel of the store, which they have to be on brand. They're ordering from our sign guy and all of the specs and the colors, and we have to go check it. Good example of that was early days. We had a store actually in Mesa, Arizona, but they didn't follow they had their store fully built out and they're ready to open. This would have been our 8th store, maybe. I don't know. I was excited to open. I'm like, yeah, just freaking get it open. Who cares if the paint's 2 shades off? Well, I hired Jill as our CEO. She started a company called Maui Wowie Smoothies and Coffee in '83. Grew it to 650 franchises, sold it. An industry vet. She's like, no, we're not doing that. Once you let them slip up once,
sure.
Then everybody's gonna be like, oh, but you let Mesa open without it being on branded or whatever. So branding is just having it defined, following a process, and then enforcing that. And then I guess the third part is kind of that culture and that the energy or the feel that you get when you walk into the store. And a lot of that is based off of the employee. So how are you training employees? But more importantly, I think is how are you measuring their results? And it's hard. Now, tech is making it easier. We haven't implemented this yet, but we have installed the cameras. But depending on the cameras, anyways, the AI technology, you get cameras that have audio as well, and it's listening kind of like a Google Home and just telling you if they're saying the key words. Like, are they greeting them? Are they waving to them? Are they asking them if they want a drink with that or something like that. Or you can look at metrics. So if I have all my employees and I can see that one employee has a 1% of her orders have drinks and another employee has 10, I know it's because the 1% employee is simply just not saying, yeah, do you want to drink with that? Or you can look at average order values. After you're done ordering, if I say, okay, here's your total, or what else can I get you? You're going to get a better order value. So you can also objectively measure all of those metrics based on who is working, what the average wait times were, who needs training, and all of that. So I think tech is the goal for that. Now we measure all, employees and wait times and all of that. I think it'll be really cool though once we could get like the audio visually in there, and supposedly the cameras are supposed to be able to measure the cookies as well to see if they're within the diameter that it's supposed to be. So we have a camera installed over like the station where the employee would hand the cookies over to the customer.
You're like a casino with the cameras looking down on the on the pit boss and the gaming tables, and the next thing you know, your employees are going to have to go like this, like they do in Vegas for the cameras. No cookies in my hand. Well, that's there are some remarkable camera systems out there. In my industry, the electronic manufacturing industry, we use cameras for inspection, and the cameras combined with a lot of training from AI can spot all sorts of things almost at a microscopic level. They can even, in some cases, spot counterfeit components and things like that, which humans have a hard time distinguishing. So, why not add that toward customer service? I have a pet peeve with McDonald's. McDonald's, and I'm convinced of this, I'll go through the McDonald's drive-thru and I'll order, fries and a Coke or something. And then they'll say, and there's no one in front of me, there's no one behind me. I'll get to the window, they'll take my money and they'll say, okay, go park in space number 7 and we'll bring it out to you. I'm like, and then I realize, I'm sure they have metrics, and it just looks at from the time they order to the time they leave the drive-through, how many seconds is it? So they just park you. And I'm thinking, once I'm parked, they have no motivation to say the order took 12 minutes to fill or 12 seconds to fill, right? And so I find myself, I've done this a few times, and I'll never do it with my wife or daughter in the car because they get mad at me. But I'll just say, no, I'll just wait here. I'm fine. And it said, no, you need to move forward. I'm like, no, I'm okay. I'll just wait here. I'm sure it won't be a few minutes. And
that's funny. I go to the Del Taco line and it has that count, the counter, like it's telling you how long you've been waiting for.
Yeah.
And anyways, it's clicking now. So if they ever ask me to pull forward, I'm going to say, nah.
I'll just stay here. I'm sure it's only going to be a few seconds. Yeah, no big deal. And that way your boss sees the real Del Taco or McDonald's experience. What advice would you give to someone thinking about franchising or purchasing a franchise for the first time? I'm sure you are hiring them as much as they are hiring you. You are choosing them as much as they're choosing you. So what advice do you or would you give in that scenario?
Yeah, so the franchising, if you want to franchise your business, it's regulated by the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, and they say you have to disclose certain information in certain orders. That's referred to as the franchise disclosure documents, or the FDD. You can Google if there's a franchise, and if the franchise is in Indiana, Wisconsin, California, or one other one, you can go to the state websites and you can just Google this and then type in Smoothie King franchise disclosure document. And now I can go research a bunch of franchise disclosure documents. If you contact the companies directly, they'll say, no, you have to have 5 calls with us first. Or you can just go get them online. And now I have a bunch of different disclosure documents to compare it to. So what do I want to pay attention to? The 3 that I could pay attention to, they say they're items rather than sections, but item means section. So item 6, 7, and 19. Item 6 is your ongoing costs, like what are your royalties in your marketing, all of that. Item 7 is what are my startup costs. And then item 19 is what is the financial performance of the company. What I specifically would look at is make sure the item 19, the financial performance, they're disclosing profits, because you don't have to disclose anything. It's just whatever you want to disclose, it has to be here. And then whatever disclosed here as a company, you can't say anything more than what's on here. So look for the item 19, try to narrow it down to brands that have profit numbers on there, and then compare that to the average opening costs in your item 7. And I would look for a 3-year payback. So if it's going to cost me 300,000 to start up, and I can make $100,000 a year. That's a good model. Right? If it costs me $1 million and I can make $350,000 a year, boom, that's a good model. After that, then obviously contact the company, start going through the process. But I would say the most important part would be to speak with existing franchisees in the system and validate everything that you've been told and really dive in. So go online, do your research on the FDDs, look at 6, 7, and 19. I would do that. Can I get a 3-year payback? Then if you're pursuing that a little bit more, obviously the validation, and then which brands to choose. Try to choose something that complements your skills. So like I'm a sales person, I would be a good candidate for like a marketing franchise or something that I get to open up. I don't need a brick and mortar. I don't need to take that risk. I don't need to have all that heavy expense, but nobody knows that I bought this franchise yet, right? Unless I go tell them. Well, I'm comfortable telling them. If you're not a salesperson, you'd probably want to go retail, get a brick and mortar and have people come to you. So what are your skills? What are your weaknesses? Go find a franchise brand that complements those. And you could just go to ChatGTP and say, here's my strengths, here's my weaknesses. This is the metrics I'm finding. What categories, what brands do you suggest I go start looking at?
That's good advice. Unfortunately, there were a couple of very negative and well-publicized franchises out there, and I'm thinking of Subway and Quiznos, and where allegedly some of the companies stopped honoring their protected territory status and started putting stores, down the street from existing stores owned by a different franchisor or franchisee, and that created issues. And then I think it was Quiznos. I read an article about them and how
Quiznos got sued as well. For
sued by their owners, or by their franchisees.
By the franchisees, right? For several reasons, but a big one was they were selling all of the food to the franchisees through a third party. I mean, it wasn't a third party company; they owned it.
Considerably more cost. Yes. Because they had their hand in two pots.
Bread at twice the cost.
Yeah, they had their hand in both their pockets there. So I think your advice to check out those sections, section 19, for example, the more transparent the franchisor is with their profit numbers and, whatever information they voluntarily give, the better. I think if that information is not there, and as you said, there's no legal reason for it to be there, but that should tell you something. That should speak volumes on its own. And I do like the advice of go into stores, talk to owners, catch them on.
And even if you don't go to the store, on that FDD, on that franchise disclosure document, it has to list all of the names and phone numbers of their current franchisees. So if you want the names of 5,000 Subway franchisees, go to California, FDD search, California state website, you could go find all of that. And then, so yes, you could go visit, but you're also calling, texting, whatever, trying to get 3 people on the phone to share that experience. There's a lot that, kind of goes back and forth into, I'm buying 2 franchises right now, a glow tanning, wellness spa franchise. So I'm kind of going through the whole process, but if anybody has any questions, I respond in social media as far as hey, what do you think about this franchise? I love evaluating businesses.
Great. I'm going to rush through this because we're starting to run out of time. There's time and then there's podcast time. I'm sure you're aware of that on your podcast. Oh, what's the deeper than dough message that you guys put out there?
Deeper than dough, more than money. So it kind of speaks to my journey of, I sold a solar company. I put my health aside. I got up to 310 pounds because I wanted to be a millionaire before 30. Achieved it. And then I'm
what you asked for, right?
And then you just kind of feel the same. So deeper than dough was, what was my actual goal with the solar company? It wasn't $1 million. It was to find more what? And I defined that as joy and fulfillment. So it's really focusing on the mental side of the entrepreneur journey, realizing that we're emotional creatures. There's no goals that we're setting that aren't to feel a certain way. So why do we always set material goals when they should be emotional goals? Because after all, we're after an emotional state, not a physical material item. So it's kind of long, but I'm passionate about all that.
So how has hosting a podcast helped you as a business owner and an entrepreneur? Well, technically you don't own Dirty Dough anymore, but something tells me you still
I've
own
started a
stuff.
franchise.
Yeah, yeah.
I've started a franchise brokerage already. I have.
Yeah, you can't stop. Yeah, you're a serial entrepreneur. How has hosting a podcast changed how you think about business, about your business, how you lead a business? Do you learn things from it?
Oh, absolutely. Especially because you interview somebody that sold a company for, way more than they need to retire, and then you're like, now what do? You're interviewing somebody 35 and realizing again, oh, wait, I had this material goal. And then once you achieve that material goal, then you realize, shoot, that wasn't my actual goal. It was an emotional goal. I wanted to feel a certain way. But I didn't, I guess, define that well enough. Sorry, man. Sorry, Mike. I started going off on, and then I'm like, wait, where was I going with that? My mind just kept going.
Mine does the same thing all the time. My daughter likes to tell me that there's a reason that ADD and Dad have the same letters. It doesn't take much to get me distracted. So last question, Bennett. How did you define success before you started your entrepreneurial journey, and how do you define it today?
Yeah, before I think it's monetary. Like, was I a millionaire or was I not a millionaire? How much money am I making per month? How much investments do I have? It was strictly material. But again, take a deeper look. Why did I want all those things? Well, I wanted it because I wanted joy and fulfillment. Joy rather than happiness, because you can't be happy all the time, but generally speaking, have a joyful life. But you can't just be happy every day. You also have to be happy of your life, right? We're proud of your life, we're fulfilled. So joy and fulfillment. I think that's the way to measure success for me. And every time I have to have a business decision, that's what I'm trying to measure it against. Which of these two decisions is going to bring me more joy and fulfillment? And that's been a lot easier of a guide to make better decisions.
Well, I'm going to experience some joy in the next week or so because I do plan on ordering some cookies off your website. So I will. I saw a picture that you guys had of that 3-layer, stuffed cookie, and it had chocolate oozing out of the center of it, and I was starting to salivate. It was like Pavlov's dog, the bell rang, and I was like, oh, I got to eat that now. And but I think the closest store to me in Southern California is maybe Dana Point.
What city are you in?
I'm in Chino Hills. I'm in the San Bernardino County. So
yeah, my brother has a Dirty Dough in Poway. I know that's a little
that's
further.
That's a little too far south. Yeah, I'll have to go to Dana Point. That's a beautiful place to go. Yeah, and it's worth going out there for a cookie like that. And people can order them online too for delivery. Do they just order it from their local store, or is it a pickup?
Actually, I think
only?
Pickup only. We do nationwide delivery. I think that's been paused really since the company bought it. So I don't know. They'll turn it back on sooner or later. But yeah, unfortunately, right now we have 70-something stores and throughout the nation and within a 10-mile radius is what they deliver.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. You don't want to piss off your store owners, by selling direct from the factory, right? So that makes perfect sense. Well, Bennett, thank you so much for being my guest today. It's been a sweet story, pardon the pun, and I wish you continued success. I don't think you need to be wished that. I think you're very successful on your own, but continued success with Dirty Dough, sell a lot more franchises, put one in my city or my county. Chino Hills is where I live. Look up Chino Hills.
No, I know Chino Hills. I sold security systems all over there.
Oh, okay. We can totally use a store like that. A good friend of mine owned up until a week ago 5 Nothing Bunt Cake franchises. Awesome. And she just sold her 5 California stores, and just because it was a good time to get out for her personally. And I was shocked at the value that she got for it, because that tells me there is a market for
there's some good money in it,
high-end baked goods that are selling more than just the product. They're selling the experience and all of that. And those stores like yours are highly decorated, very strict protocol. They every store is kind of the same in terms of, the look they're going for, the culture that they're going for, and that's been successful for them. And I'm sure it is and will continue to be successful for Dirty Dough. So thanks, Bennett. I really appreciate the time. For my audience, if you're watching this on YouTube, look down here. You'll see links to Dirty Dough and links to, if you're interested in buying a franchise, we'll put some links there as well. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, just look at the show notes on your podcast app and you'll see that information there as well. Bennett Maxwell, thank you so much. I really appreciate your wisdom and sharing your journey with me and my audience.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast. A very special thanks to Bennett Maxwell for being my guest on the show. The Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast is available on all major podcast sites and on the Reluctant Entrepreneur YouTube channel. We've been busy recording future episodes with fascinating guests, which I'm so excited to share with you. So don't miss out. Subscribe to the podcast to be notified when new episodes are released. We release new episodes twice a month on the first and third Tuesday. If you're an entrepreneur or know an entrepreneur who would like to be a guest on the show, please let me know. Visit mikeconrad.com/podcast and apply to be a guest or to recommend a guest. Just remember, that's Conrad spelled with a K. If you'd like to reach out to me, my email address is mike@mikeconrad.com. Again, Conrad with a K. If you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup from Uncertainty to Unstoppable, it's available as a paperback as well as a Kindle version, both available on Amazon, and as an audiobook, available on both Audible and Amazon. Thanks again for listening or watching. Until I see you again, be unstoppable.